Hello and welcome to the third hangout of the Big Data Europe project, especially Societal Challenge 6, which is Europe in a Changing World, Inclusive, Innovative and Reflective Societies. My name is Ivana Iliasic-Versic and I'm employed at CESDA, who is the host of this hangout. Before we start, I would like to go over the agenda and introduce our presenters. So I will do the very short introduction to the project and to CESDA. And then the pilot will be presented by Michalis Fafopoulos, who is our partner from National Center for Scientific and Research, Demokritos from Greece. Then technology behind the pilot will be presented by Martin Kaltenbach, who is CEO at a Semantic Web company from Vienna, Austria. Then a questions and answers session of approximately 10 minutes will follow, and in the end we'll just do the wrap up and draw some conclusions. Person behind and the background of all this, what's happening of our hangout is Thomas Turner, also from Semantic Web company from Vienna. And my colleague Jean-Baptiste Milon will handle the questions and answers session. He is also from CESDA, as me. Before we start, I would like to tell you that hangout is recorded, and the slides that you will see and the summary of the hangout will be published next week, so you can find it in Big Data Europe website. And you can see the control panel for GoToWebinar. So in the end, there is a chat slot at the bottom. So all the questions participants may have, you can just put it in the chat, and questions will be collected by my colleague Jean-Baptiste and then posted to presenters in the questions and answers session. So to start with the introduction. So Big Data Europe is a 3-year Horizon 2020 coordination and support action project. It means empowering communities with data, and it's huge and quite important, as we learned along the way, projects hugely supported by DG Connect. So what we are trying to do within this project is to produce an integrated stack of tools to manipulate, publish, and use large-scale data resources. So the main measures of coordination and support actually are to engage with a diverse range of stakeholder groups, which are representing particularly the Horizon 2020 societal challenges. There are 7 of them. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this is Societal Challenge 6, so it mainly deals with social sciences and humanities. The other thing is to design, realize, and evaluate big data aggregator platform infrastructure that is being built. So there are 2 parallel processes. One is very huge engagement with the stakeholder community, more about dissemination and supporting that community in its needs. And then the other thing is very technical. It's a big data aggregator platform, and our technical partners are dealing with that part. Rationale behind this project is to first and foremost to show the societal value of big data, and then to lower the barriers for using big data technologies, which are mostly caused by required effort and resources, and usually, especially in social sciences and humanities, these are not very disposable, and you cannot count of many resources and accordingly the effort that goes with it. And then there are limited data science skills, especially in this area, and we have to try to raise awareness and try to increase those skills. And then in the end, to help establish cross-lingual, cross-organizational, cross-domain data value chains. So the 3 big data V's that it is all about is actually data velocity, data volume, data variety. How big is the data set, how fast is it, and how different is data within it. So within social sciences and humanities, variety is actually quite distinct, and there are many forms of data that can be collected, especially in this area. We have a quite big consortium, as you can see on the screen. There are technical partners, there are more networking partners. CESDA is one of the networking partners, and Semantic Web Company, our colleagues from Semantic Web Company are technical partners, technical support, and we are doing most of the tasks within this project together. So pairs like this exist throughout the consortium, and as you can see, it is quite big. So at this phase of the project, we are trying to do for each societal challenge a specific pilot, which means data that can be put on big aggregators platform. So webinar or hangout today is about the pilot within social sciences and humanities, or societal challenge 6. And it is not only CESDA and Semantic Web Company, but we are doing it in cooperation with our third partner from the consortium, which is Democritus, and Michalis is going to present the pilot itself. A few words about CESDA. It is a consortium of social science data archives, which means that CESDA itself is a research infrastructure in social sciences and humanities. We're trying to deliver better access to data, regardless of data or researcher location. And at the moment, we have 15 member countries across European Union and one observer, which is Slovakia. And as I already mentioned, we are the main representative for Societal Challenge 6. And our main tasks are to coordinate the Societal Challenge 6 of potential users in the field of social sciences and humanities, and to build this interest group, collect requirements, assist the building of big data infrastructure along with our technical partners, and serve as access point for social sciences and humanities. So these are our contacts. For me, Jean-Baptiste, and for Martin, I'm sure that Michalis will share his contact data with you. Again, thank you for this part, and I would like to hand the floor over to Michalis Vafopoulos from Democritus.
Hello, my name is Michalis Vafopoulos from NCSR Democritus in Athens, Greece. It is the biggest research center in the country and one of the biggest in Europe, and we're working with linked open economic data for the last 6 years. So I would like to present you the idea and objectives of the specific pilot. First of all, we have realized last year that the budget, it is one of the most important documents in public policy. Budget execution affects everyday lives, and local budgets, city budgets, are more relevant to the citizens than the central government budget. So the question is, can we make these budgets, these numbers, useful for citizens, researchers, and decision makers? So in this direction, we have started creating online dashboard on economic indicators. And we started first with harvesting. We have to address issues arising from heterogeneous formats. We normalize the data, we linked and we map the data, and analyzing. I'll just give you some more insight about the data model later. And also, one of the basic aspects is to visualize and this simplified data. And of course, we would like this data to be processed and reused further from the research community in order to enrich with new and other datasets. Potential users and usages are citizens and professionals, specifically journalists. They can use these infographics and the simplified analysis in order to create data stories. Decision maker in government or in business, they're used to use financial ratios, KPIs, etc. And finally, as I said before, researchers, they can access in detailed and aligned datasets in machine-readable formats without having to know all the details of different datasets. How? In your data stories project, which is an EU Horizon project, we are expanding the idea of the linked economy model. The idea of the linked economy model is actually to create, we have created and we are expanding a common semantic model that addresses that models not only budgets or public procurement, but the economic activity as such. So by having this, you can really make policy propositions more effective. So it's an economic theory driven model based on existing vocabularies like FOAF or good relations. We are following a structured and open development process. You can find our model in GitHub. There's a link in my presentation. And this model is easy to be consumed by any system since it is scalable and reusable. So what types of data we have in order to start? First of all, the biggest city of Greece, the capital of Greece, is publishing through an API the daily budget execution in account level. Actually, all the states, the different states of an account, from budgeting up to spending, it is reported for the last 5 years. And also the second, and we're talking about, let's say, 1 billion per year, which is quite important. And also the municipality of Thessaloniki, the second biggest city, and Kalamaria also in the wide Thessaloniki metropolitan area. And also we're using additional demographic data, for instance, if, for instance, we want to calculate per capita financial ratios, then we're using linked open data from the census 2011. And we're talking about 7 megabytes of raw data per week, but the most important thing is that the variety and the veracity of the data are very complicated, because even there is a central standard, accounting standard for cities, each city in the low level of reporting its account uses different approach in some aspects, so we need to account for these different approaches in order our data to be comparable. So the idea is just to have a look in input raw data just from an expense code, a detailed expense code from a budgeted item or committed item, or even from a revenue code, to move to financial ratios. For instance, you can see here that you can calculate revenues per capita for these 3 cities during 2015. But even more than that, every researcher can make his own financial indicator, or even interconnect with other datasets. So that's the main idea. As Ivana said before, these are the partners and the European projects involved. So that's a very brief overview of what we're doing, and I will be very happy later in the discussion to give you some more details in the aspect you think that it will be interesting for you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Michalis, and I would like to welcome Martin Kaltenbach from Semantic Web Company to present the technology behind the Big Data Euro project and our pilot.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ivana. I hope you can see my screen well that I'm sharing with you. My name is Martin Kaltenbach from the Semantic Web Company. I'm CFO here. And thanks a lot for introduction, and also Michalis, thank you very much for the introduction, objectives, ideas behind the pilot that we're doing here in SC6 of Big Data Europe. So jumping to the next one, I think that already has been introduced by Ivana. Just as a short reminder, we are working in 7 societal challenges, and today we are speaking about societal challenge 6. And as a second reminder, we have 2 main goals in our project. The one is coordination, so create big data interest groups in the 7 societal challenges, and the other one is to put together a cloud deployment ready big data aggregator platform. And before going into the details of the technology of the pilot that we just got explained by Michalis, I will tell you a little bit about the platform, because the platform is the basis also for the implementation of our pilot. So as Ivana also said, and here it's very important, we did a very comprehensive requirement elicitation and specification along all the 7 societal challenges, and it was not only societal challenge 6 where we found out that one of the most pressing issue that really is in place, beside volume that is arising but that is not the big problem today, and also velocity, so the speed of processing data or real-time processing of data. The real pressing issue in all 7 societal challenges is the data variety. Means we have data in different formats with coming from different sources in different languages and so on and so forth. And this is also a challenge in our pilot that I will explain a little bit more in detail afterwards. So going to the next slide, here you see the current state of the platform architecture. So the Big Data Europe platform, to make it clear, is not a totally from scratch newly developed system or platform. It is something that is put together by existing components. That means that we have chosen existing and well-proven, mainly Apache big data components. You see here, for example, Spark, or you see HDFS, so Hadoop, and for sure also Kafka, that is a messaging system, and so on and so forth. And we have bundled that together, and we have put it together, and it's orchestrated by a technology that is called Docker. So all the components are Dockerized, and then we use a technology called Docker Swarm that orchestrates all these Docker components with each other, so that you can make pipelines and that all these components can play together. And a very important thing that we also did in Big Data Europe is we put in a support layer, a user interface. So on the one hand side, that also supports orchestration, but that you also have a user interface that you can then make these components play and interplay with one and another. And a second thing, beside putting things together and making them easy workable, is that we recognize that in big data technologies these days, there's a very big lack of, I would say, semantics inside. So what does that mean when you take data from very different sources and a lot of different sources, and you have large volumes of data, and you process this, you fuse this data, you put it together into your application or your data warehouse, or these days we speak about the data lake, then very often at the end you don't know where the data came from, and you don't know which tools data was processed with. So the so-called provenance, the source of data, the processing of data, is not available anymore at the end. So for us it was very important, it is important that we do not lose this information from the beginning of harvesting of a data set from a source until the end where the data is then used in an application. So the Big Data Europe platform provides something new on top of existing components, and we call it here, we are adding a semantic layer to the data lake that can help to have all the metadata and all the information about the data still inside your data lake or your data warehouse when you use the Big Data Europe platform. So this is an important add-on, and when we started to speak about our platform, there were questions arising that were very good ones, or that question was arising, asking us, yeah, but there are so many platforms already out there, like Hortonworks or Cloudera or Mapper, that are in place, that are mainly open source. So what is the difference between the ones that we already can choose from and the Big Data Europe platform? And here you see an overview, and as Michalis said, or Ivana, or both of them, all the slides will be published, so you can also take a look at this afterwards in detail. But the most important one, I would say, is on the one hand side, the row number 3, So plug and play components with no rigid schema. So what does that mean? That means that you, in other systems, you have to use the whole stack with given schema in front, and with Big Data Europe, you are able to say, okay, I'm only using component 1, 3, and 7, and so I only download these 3 components. They do interplay with each other, and I don't have to install and set up a very big technology stack. I can only use a very smart one. And the second one, and that is also a very important one, is the row here saying addition of custom components. So as we are using Docker and Docker Swarm, so Dockerization, or Docker is the technology behind bringing components together, you can also make use of your own tool, of your own technology, if it's able or if it's possible to Dockerize this component, and then as a Docker image you can easily put also an additional tool or additional component into your Big Data Europe stack or into your big data stack. So these are the main 2, I would say, advantages that I would raise. You can read about the other ones also in the slide that I listed here. So after this introduction regarding the overall aggregator platform, I would like to tell you how the technology works behind our pilot that Michalis just presented. It's called Citizens Budget on Municipal Level. And as we said, or as said before, we have 3 partners, that is Sesta, Semantic Web Company, and Democritos. And we have a project partner, and this project was presented also. It's called Your Data Stories. And we are looking forward also to work with another R&D project that is called Open Budgets, and coordinate or cooperate together with them on this pilot. So the big thing here is, again, that there is so much data out there, so much budget data, and this budget data is very diverse or heterogeneous, so it comes from different sources. At the moment it has only 1 language, but in future steps I will present that we will have several languages, and it has several dimensions with several, let's say, dimensions used in budgets, and these dimensions are even different in Greece, in different cities. But you can imagine, if you compare, for example, a budget from Athens with a budget from, let's say, Madrid in Spain, that beside the language issue you have also the issue that the budget is structured differently, that the categories are named differently, and so on and so forth. So that is the big challenge regarding, and we have it here in the first bullet point when we speak about the 4 V's here, about variety. So as said, from different sources, different languages, different dimensions, the challenge here is to put things together to make it really useful, to make it comparable. The second V we have in place that is also important for the pilot in the future, and that's a reason, one of the reasons why we use big data technology here, is we want to expand it to more and more data sources. So that means maybe you don't find in Europe, in every country, budget execution data on a daily basis, but at least you find very good fine granular budget data in all the countries. For example, in Austria, where I come from, we have in the big cities, but also in the smaller municipalities, the budgets are available as open data, so we can make use of it. And if we blow all these data into our machines or into our pilot, then you can imagine that the volume over time will grow, and that we need also related good technology to manage this volume of data. Same with velocity. Here we come back to budget execution data. So if we want to process data on a daily basis or a weekly basis, we have data flows that we really have to process, maybe not in real time, but very quickly. So really that we can provide fresh data. And that's the area of velocity where we are working on and where we need this big data technology. And last but not least, I mentioned it before, the 4V, the 4th V that is always used in big data is so-called veracity. That means somehow the truth behind the data. So how can you get out the noise of it? And this was also said before. taking into account that also the 3 municipalities that we are using data from at the moment have sometimes different structures in the budgets, we have to really take care that these mappings between dimensions and so on work properly. By the way, because it's always important to mention this, there is a 5th V that is called value, and we really hope that the value that we can provide with this pilot is a good one and people are going to use it. More about the technology coming from the Big Data Europe stack that I explained before. I will start here on the left-hand side and guide you through the process how we are processing and analyzing the data. So you see on the left-hand side of the screen the data sources. Here we have source A, B, and C. So we acquire this data from the municipalities. Sometimes we have API in places, sometimes we have files in place in different formats. So there is a framework that is called Flume that is responsible for data acquisition and for fetching this data and then handing it over into a workflow or into a pipeline, a messaging system that is that we are using Apache Kafka for. And in the first step, Apache Kafka is just telling Flume, fetch the data from the source and put it into HDFS. So just put the raw data into a storage, into a file system. Then the second step comes into place, and we are also via Kafka messages, we are taking again this data and we are applying some, I would say, analysis and processing on top of this data. So what are we doing? We're on the one hand side, we are extracting the data, we are analyzing it, we are converting it to RDF. So all the data that we at the end have in our data lake is RDF data, Resource Description Framework, as a format. But we also link the data and we, let's say, we calculate or we pre-calculate some parts of the data, for example, some financial ratios. And this is done then again using Kafka as a messaging system that is handing over from one tool to the other. But the queries hereby are written or created in Spark, in Apache Spark. That is also one of the most important, I would say, big data components we have in place. And as I mentioned before, this data is very heterogeneous. So we have different dimensions in different data sets. And here comes into place that we use, I would say, semantic technology again. We use a tool that is called Pool Party Semantic Suite that comes from our company, the Semantic Web Company. And in this tool, we can do some mapping. So you can see that in the middle we have, for example, a knowledge model. As said before, this can be financial ratios, this can be dimensions, dimensions of a budget. And then from the different budget structures and the different dimensions, we do a mapping on one unique structure, so that we are able then in a future step to compare on the one hand side data coming from Thessaloniki with data from Athens using different structures, but we then can map it to financial ratios that we can compare, for example, the citizens' expenditures per capita or something, or another financial ratio between all these data sets. And then we store the data after this processing by Spark and using Pool Party. We store this data into a triple store, so into a storage system as RDF data. That's the reason why we use a triple store, so a graph database. And here we use Virtuoso by OpenLink. And then when we have all these data inside our triple store that is linked to each other, that is, let's say, normalized and converted to RDF, then it's important that we're going and query the data and provide analysis on top of it. So what we do then, we use Sparkle, that's the query language on top of Resource Description Framework, so the query language of the Semantic Web, to write queries, predefined queries on top of our triple store, and we visualize the results on our user interface or on a user interface. So that was a little bit of a high-level flow of data that is going through our Big Data Europe stack for SC6 pilot. And what you see here is again a list of components that we are using here. So as said before, a lot of Apache components are in place as Flume, Kafka, Spark for ingestion, messaging, and also transformation and analysis. Then we have as a raw storage system HDFS. We have Pool Party Semantic Suite for this mapping, curation, and data consolidation. We store it, the RDF at the end, into Open Links Virtuoso as a triple store. And for sure, we use Apache HTTP for linking data, and we use Apache Avro for the intermediate data schema creation. And for visualization, we have two things in place. The one is we use JavaScript libraries, and here we use very clear the D3 JavaScript library. That is a very powerful JavaScript library that gives you also predefined charts, for example, or other visualizations that you can easily reuse, but that you can also change if you want to. And finally, we put things together on an interface or a system that is called Pool Party Graph Search, so that we see, so that we can filter the data, that we compare the data, and then we visualize the data. So what you see here is we are in the middle of implementing of our pilot. It's just a very rough first mock-up, but you can imagine on the left-hand side, you can filter which municipalities you want to compare, and then you can select some ratios, and at the end you get visualizations and graphs over time that give you comparison. And very important, you also can export all the data, so you can query the data via an API, a data API that is the Sparkle endpoint, so you can query all the data. And you also can say, okay, compare financial ratios between Athens and Thessaloniki, and then you get a chart, and you can use the chart or download the chart and put it in your slides or in your report, but you can also then exactly download the raw data that is used to create this chart. So your selection can be, the data of your selection can be used and downloaded. That was a quick overview about the technology on the one hand side of Big Data Europe, on the other hand side of our pilot on budget and budget execution data. Very important, this pilot will be launched in November. It will be available for everybody, so it will be available publicly, and we will send that via our website and our mailing list, so that community is informed about that. And then we start something like an evaluation approach on our pilot. So on the one hand side, we will invite the municipalities where we take data from themselves and ask them to use the system and give us feedback. We will invite the community, let's say the open data community, if there is something like that, the data community, but mainly the Big Data Europe community, as we are a support and coordination action. We are building this community, and as we have a very strong partner regarding technical issues, that is the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, we also will ask them for support to invite people to play around with this pilot. And as said before, there are 3 partners or projects, 3 participating projects in this pilot. We will ask these partners also to take a look at it and give us feedback. And very important, we will have a dedicated workshop this year. Maybe some of you know, we have every year we have 1 workshop per societal challenge. So last year we had in November the Societal Challenge 6 workshop at Eurostat in Luxembourg with around 45 participants, where we discussed requirements on data management in Societal Challenge 6. And this year the focus will be on use cases, concrete examples where big data technology is used, and the focus point will be our pilot that we just presented, but then it will be live, it will be available, and we will discuss that pilot. And this workshop is, or takes place on the 5th of December, that's a Monday, in Cologne in Germany, because it's hosted by GESIS, and it will be back to the EDI conference that maybe Ivana afterwards can say a few words what EDI conference is all about. And additionally, if you're interested in really hardcore technology issues of this pilot, in November there is I think it's in Sevilla, there is the Apache conference, the Apache Big Data Con, and Big Data Europe will be there and also organize a workshop that shows then all 7 societal challenge pilots and implementations, and mainly we invite people to come there and with their own machine install the platform and the stack and play around with it. Finally, very important on top of evaluation is, or as an addition in evaluation, is that we want to work with a growing amount of data over time, and that means a growing number of sources and formats that we will put into the system. That means additional municipalities and their budget data in different languages, and also additional analytics. So more and more filters and ratios and dimensions will be added that users are able to compare them between the growing number of municipalities we have in place. So that was nearly everything from my side, because before we go into question and answering, I would like to invite you to the workshop I just mentioned before, because this workshop is open, so participation is free of charge. You just have to come to Cologne on 5th of December. It will be in the afternoon, starting at 2 p.m. to around 5:30. We have 40 seats in total, and I think we have 33 or 34 left. So if you're interested to participate and you can come to Cologne, then please use this link that is given here, that is also available on the BDE website already, and there you also find a very detailed agenda for the workshop, and just register for free. Maybe you're interested not only in Societal Challenges 6, that is societies, but also in other societal challenges. Then in my slides, or here, you see all the other workshops taking place in 2016. And finally, to participate or to get in touch with Big Data Europe, just feel free to use the workshops and the webinars or hangouts as we have at the moment. Feel free to use the Big Data Europe platform. It's available on GitHub and it's free of charge. And on the website you find a lot of information. Then there is one World Wide Web Consortium community group on Big Data Europe, and I think the easiest way to stay in touch, or better to stay informed, is just to subscribe to one or the other mailing list. There is one mailing list per societal challenge, and there is one project mailing list, and we promise that we don't spam you, so you won't get too much information. But if you subscribe, for example, for Societal Challenge 6, then you will get information about the workshop, when it takes place, how to register, and so on. And you get information about a hangout or a webinar that is planned on the project or for Societal Challenge 6. So for the moment, that was everything on my side, just a little bit coordinates. But I think I'll leave that slide open, and maybe Ivana, you would like to say a little bit about the EDI conference?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. So as you probably know, EDI 2016 is actually 8th annual European DDI User Conference, Data Description Initiative User Conference, and call for papers is extended to 15th of September, or actually it was extended to 15th of September. You are more than welcome to participate in the CESDA panels, CESDA sessions during the EDI, and of course in our, which is the most important thing, in our second workshop that is organized as a side meeting or back-to-back event to EDI 2016, and it will happen on 5th of December in the afternoon in the GASIS, Leibniz Institute for Social Sciences. So we are actually located within the institute with our workshop, and as Martin said, we have many seats left. So please join us, and especially if you are planning to join EDI conference, it makes sense in a way. So what I know at the moment that will happen in EDI, as long as CESDA is presented, is a bit of marketing for CESDA. It is well presented this year, and there is actually a session titled CESDA on Tuesday, December 6th, with 3 presentations. So one is a capability development model for assessing and improving distributed infrastructures and their services. The other one is reference model for social science and humanities data infrastructures towards a common architectural model. And the final one is a metadata management tool of any use, extending CESDA software maturity metrics to the DDI domain. So in addition, we have presentations about CESDA metadata management core metadata, then control vocabularies, and Euro question bank. So CESDA is basically doing all of these things. We're not just participating in Big Data Europe project, but we're having a lot of work being done inside CESDA, within CESDA, with its internal projects. So this is in a way a reflection of it. So we are actually expecting that many people from CESDA will attend our workshop and see actually how big data fits into social sciences and humanities and everything the CESDA is doing. But anyway, as you probably also know, that European DDI user conference will be extended, so it lasts for 6th and 7th for 2 days in December, but there will be side meetings on the 5th, including a Big Data Europe workshop that we are hosting, and side meetings on 8th. So it's actually a whole week event, and again, you are all more than welcome to join. So registration is open. Call for papers was extended, is closed now, but anyway, I bet if you call the organizers or ask them, they will accept over the deadline some submissions. So the draft program is also available. So you just have to Google EDI conference and 2016, and then you'll get all the needed links. So that would be all. I don't think that at this point we need to add anything more about advertising CESDA, EDI, or BDE workshop. Again, you are more than welcome to come. In the meantime, I actually hope that some questions were posted. So maybe JB can tune in now and tell us if there are any questions posted.
Yes, thanks, Ivana. Hello, everybody. Jean-Baptiste speaking from CESDA. I'll be in charge of chairing the Q&A session now. So I have 3 questions so far. So keep posting questions if you have some in the chat thread on the right of your screen. Okay, so the first question is, which data are you planning to put in the pilot in the future? So maybe this question could be addressed to Martin, if you're still here.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jean-Baptiste, for this, or for whoever asking that question. So as said before, on the one hand side, we are going to ingest more and more budget execution data from different municipalities across Europe. So we found out that budget execution data is also in place in the city of Barcelona in Spain, for example. And as said, in Austria, we have a lot of municipalities that are publishing very fine-grained, very interesting budget data. But that is not enough. So on the other hand side, to provide more insights, we are going to have more socioeconomic data. That means data from Eurostat, for example, or from the national statistical offices. That can also mean data from United Nations or the open data portal of the World Bank, so that we can put more and more data together. Maybe Michalis wants to react also on that, as he is the expert on how to analyze that data then more and more. So what he has in mind and what could be useful for financial ratios, for example.
Yes, I think also some data about demographics per municipality, or even we are open to ideas from social researchers, and one of, I think, the goals of the workshop will be to identify some data or metrics that will be useful for the social science community.
Okay, thanks very much. So we're going to move on to the second question. Maybe, Michalis, you could tell us how you selected the financial ratios.
Yes. First of all, in corporate finance, there's a specific branch of researching financial ratios, and this is very mature and well developed, but it's not happening the same for public budgets. Even for city budgets, there's a very few papers or analysis about how to extract or actually to summarize and compare economic meaning from local budgets. So it was one of the most demanding part, because we have done research and we have tried to get some ideas from corporate finance, but also from the way the public accounting system is working. So we have set, I think, an interesting pool of financial indicators from many aspects of the local budget. And now, as I said before, we were looking to form some new financial ratios that are not strictly accounting based, but they're going beyond strictly accounting numbers. For instance, you spend for energy, and in some accounts you can see the spending in energy, but you would like to put that in context and to see how effective are these spendings on energy. So if we have data related to prices or to the result of this spending and to capture it in a financial ratio, it will be welcome and will be very interesting to see how we can measure and address these issues.
Okay, thanks very much, Michaelis. Very enlightening. Okay, so I have a third question. I don't know who is more indicated to reply to that question, so feel free to answer anybody. What is the difference between Cloudera stack and BDE stack?
Okay, so Martin speaking. If okay, I try to take over that question. Because that's good to answer, because we had a slide in here, maybe you remember, that gives us an overview about some big data stacks, and on the right hand side Big Data Europe. So Cloudera here is the second column that you see. So from a file system, for example, so where data is stored, both with HDFS, so that's the same. It starts already in the second row, installation. So we have a lightweight virtualization that is based on Docker. And then the main, or one of the main things, is number 3 here, that is play and plug components on not a rigid schema. So saying, can you select which components you are interested in to use out of the whole stack, or do you have to download or install the whole stack? And here for Cloudera you have to take, let's say, the whole party, and for Big Data Europe you can really select on that. Going more far down, I also said some things before that are interesting. So Cloudera is in principle free, so here it's marked as commercial, but from a point of really using it in your organization, I would say you have to go for the commercial version and you need commercial support. What is also an advantage for sure by Cloudera, that you have commercial support, and Big Data Europe is free. You get support, but at the moment we're working on, let's say, sustainability of the stack, but for the moment it's maintained by the project consortium. Scaling is nearly the same, not totally. So freemium means that you can use Cloudera for, let's say, some flat rate of data on a free model, but then when you scale out, that you also have to pay for that. Big Data Europe is totally free. I mean, always keeping in mind you need cloud infrastructure. You have to pay like Amazon Web Service, or you have to install it on your own cluster, and then the cluster costs money in buying it and then also maintaining it. Important one is also the next one, addition to custom components, or of custom components I mentioned before. So for Cloudera it's not possible to do that because it's a fixed stack, because this stack is also tested very intensively, and with Big Data Europe you can do so, but then if you add your own component, what is an advantage, you also have to take care about integration tests for sure. That is the next point. So integration testing is not done by Big Data Europe. That means that the components are tested and the interplay of components are tested, but, and that's the nice thing, as we're using really or nearly the same components, at least in the basic stack, than Hortonworks or Cloudera does, we build on top of the integration testing that is done by these platforms. So that is very nice. Operating system, Cloudera runs only on Linux. We can run on all operating operating systems, so also Windows servers, for example, and at least it's a difference in management tools. So Cloudera has an own manager that is called Cloudera Manager, and as presented before, the Big Data Europe stack is using Docker and Docker Swarm with a user interface that is customized. So that was a brief overview, but I hopeful, or let's say, hopefully a good one, a helpful one.
That was very helpful. Thank you very much, Martin. Okay, so I cannot see any more questions. So I think we're done with questions now.
Okay.
So
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jean-Baptiste. So I guess that the only thing that is left is to wrap up and to thank our audience and to thank our panelists for this hangout, the third one in a row. And of course to invite all of you present to attend a workshop of Big Data Europe Societal Challenge 6 in Cologne on 5th of December. And of course you will be notified about our next hangout that will be organized in future months. So if nobody else has to add anything, I would like to thank again all of you and say goodbye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thanks to everyone. Bye-bye.